Thank you for taking the time to listen to Ask Win. If you would like to stop this podcast at any time, you are welcome to it. But I would request that you come back to this podcast and look for my books on Amazon. Type in I Win, Hope in Life on Amazon or your favorite ebook provider or on Audible.
Welcome to Ask Win, everyone. If you heard that voice in the background, that's not mine. That is Mr. Tim Lewis. And Mr. Tim Lewis gave up his day job, I believe in financial trading, in London, England. So there we have an overseas guest calling me this morning. But I believe he gave up his day job in London, England, in trading after losing his wife in 2011, which is significant to me because I actually lost my mother in 2010. So we have a very similar journey, Tim and I, as to starting this self-publishing industry a year apart, believe it or not. And to give you guys an update on my book should be back to me as of next week. All nicely described from the editors. I say nicely described because I gave my editor full rights to describe. So I have to now pick up the puzzle pieces and put her nicely described work back together, which I fully intended on doing because I knew she was going to destroy it. So as I'm doing this, I'm actually going to let you guys somehow follow along, whether I do it live on the podcast or whether I do a Facebook Live or I don't know. I don't know how I'm going to let you guys follow along, but that's the update on my book. And so enough of my update. I'm going to let Mr. Tim Lewis take it away.
Hi, well, thanks for having me on the show, Win. As some of you may know, or some of you may not know, I'm the host of the Begin Self-Publishing podcast, and I'm also the author of 6 books. I wrote 3 fantasy novels and 3 time travel novellas, and at the moment I'm working on a book about using social media to get ahead in your career and get ahead in your life.
And you actually, because I took a sneak peek at your podcast this morning before we got on this call, you actually said in your podcast that you found a job via social media. And what is that job, pray tell? Is that a freelancing job or was that your day job at the time before losing your wife, or what was that job?
Well, actually, it's been 2 jobs, but they've both been more like freelancing. So I did one, I got one job with the Alliance of Independent Authors. I'm basically their podcasting, sort of ambassador, and I've done some piecemeal work for them. I've created a podcasting guide for them. And that purely came out of a connection I made via my podcast, actually having a guest on it. In terms of actually getting a job purely by social media, I actually was a volunteer, and I got free ticket to Social Media Marketing World purely from connections that I made on social media. So
how cool is that?
Yeah.
How cool is that?
I mean, and the funny thing is the theme of the book is about 4 different categories of things, and I've known I've done 2 of them myself, which is getting a job from social media and also going to a city where you don't know anybody apart from on social media and having a good time, which I've done a few times now. This is actually probably the easiest of the things I'm interviewing people about. I'm also interviewing people about how they found love on social media, and there's some very interesting stories there. Though those are the stories you really have to ask people about, because a lot of people for whatever reason, it's not quite as bad as people. It's still like people saying they don't like dating sites. They won't say that they met their partner on a dating site, and a lot of people won't say that they met their partner through a Facebook group or whatever. But an awful lot of people have. So it's about the whole book. Concept of the book is interviews with people about how they've got jobs on social media or how they've used social media to basically getting a promotion in their existing job. So that's the background to the book that I'm writing at the moment.
And I know you do solo work all the time, and I apologize for the unexpected coughing attack. But how does it feel interviewing people for a book? And I know I haven't done an interview style book, but I am going to work on a book about meningitis and my mom's experience in landing up in the hospital and dying from meningitis. Thank you very much. And so I am going to be working on an interview style book on that. But how do you feel about interviewing people for a book? Do they say, oh, I don't want to be interviewed, I don't want to share my story, or were they pretty open with you, Tim?
Well, originally this book wasn't going to be an interview-based one. I was going to write a book about my own experiences, like just getting a job and almost like a kind of, this is the theory about it. But then on my podcast, I was talking to one of the guests and she said, oh, well, if you want any, I was talking to her about the book and she said, oh, if you want any case studies, you can interview me. And I thought, case studies, that's a good idea. So I put a Facebook post out saying like, can anybody give me any stories in any of these 4 categories of items? And expecting like 2 or 3 responses. I had about 45 people come back and say, oh yes, we've got a story about that. Now, I've interviewed about 20 of them, and there's been about 10 or 15 people who, in the end, didn't want to be interviewed for the book. Because I do think that when you actually, sometimes when people think about it, they think like, oh yeah, well maybe I don't want to reveal. Certainly it's true about the romantic side. Some people don't want to, especially if they're in a new relationship with somebody they met on social media, they don't want to curse it by talking to somebody who's an author about it. I mean, it's going to be different for me because I've interviewed about 3/4 of the people I'm going to interview. There's a few people I'm still chasing. But it's almost, I'm starting from audio with this book, where most of the other books I've just written in a normal way. So I'm going to have to get the audio transcribed and then write or record. I may record my stuff so I can create the audio book first, and then paste in the interview. But it's a much more organisational project even than my previous works, which have just been traditional like fiction books. So it will be an interesting experience. I think it's not a bad way to write a book, to basically interview people and then get those interviews transcribed, because you've already got the audio to begin with, so the audio book can be produced at the same time. Yeah. And you're not doing most of the work, but you do become like a curator, and you do have a kind of responsibility to your interviewees to use their interviews wisely and obviously take out anything that's offensive. I made an effort, I got a legal agreement drafted that I sent out to all the interviewees so that they are giving me the rights to include it, because it's one of those things where if you just interview people, it's more dubious what their rights are in terms of reselling. I mean, for a podcast, you can interview people and it's fine, but if you're reselling it, then you do need to be giving people proper credit and stuff.
I was just going to ask that. I was going to say, because some people get the heebie-jeebies even with me interviewing them. So I can imagine when you interview them for the book without telling them. I can imagine. So good on you for getting a legal contract drawn up just so they know what they're getting into.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's clear that there'll be an interview for the book and I will use the interview content in the book. But even so, there's still misunderstandings. I mean, one advantage that I see about for promoting this book is that obviously because I've got 20 odd people who I've interviewed, they're going to help with the promotion of the book going forward.
Yeah.
I'll obviously tell you when the book's released how much difference that makes.
Yes. Yes, please do, because I want to help promote it. I want to help promote it. And so I know that I want to help promote it. People handing me books, handing me physical copies of books left to right. Instead of my dad goes, I live with my dad, by the way, if you guys haven't figured that out. And my dad goes, another book? What are you doing here? Hoarding books? And so I have a stack of books for my fan base that I now need to read. And it's like another book, fan mail to win another book. And it's like, yes, people keep handing me books. And so I wish they would hand it to me on audio tape so I can actually listen to it. But people keep handing me books, which I think is wonderful. But that being said, I want to help you promote your book on social media. So now, what is the best social media tool you have found for promoting your book while researching this book or promoting your book in general?
Well, I mean, part of the reason I'm writing this book is that I've honestly not been that successful at marketing books on social media using the traditional kind of, though I think one of the great issues is that social media marketing in general changes every 5 minutes, and what worked a year ago might not work anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody who's got a Facebook page, which is different from a Facebook profile, but it's like, I don't know if you've got an Ask Win Facebook page, but you will have noticed that the number of people, fans of your page who actually see your posts has been going down, like, considerably over the last couple of years. Now, you can look at that and think, like, well, I post on my Facebook page and nobody's seeing it. This is a disaster. But what I would say to that, and to people who are sort of negative on social media as a marketing and a connection tool, is that if there's a particular company or person that you want to get in contact with, you're going to have so much less competition if you go and go and seek out their posts or their Facebook page and you comment on it and you basically make them feel important. So because Facebook and other social media reach has gone down, if you're actually somebody who seeks out content rather than just looking at your Facebook feed all the time, so whatever, if you like, say, Mark Schaefer's Facebook page, then that's all very well, but if you don't look at it regularly, then you're probably not going to see it in your feed. But if you just spend the time to actually, like, cultivate those connections with people who you're interested in or may be helpful for promoting your book, then actually social media in some ways has got easier because the reach of all these Facebook pages has gone down. So I don't know if that really answered the question, but that was kind of the lesson I learned.
That did. Really? So you like a Facebook page more than you like your personal Facebook profile. And the reason why I'm not on Facebook, you guys, is because of Cambridge Analytica. And if you Google what happened with Facebook, Cambridge Analytica, you will find out that they leaked all this data. So I finally took Facebook off my phone. I finally took Messenger off my phone because I don't want to be involved with leaking data. So, but I'm still a big fan of Twitter, so you guys can find me on Twitter, and my podcast still goes to Facebook. So, you like Facebook groups, or are you more of a page guy?
No, I mean, I think groups are probably the place. Well, if we wind back a bit and we look at, like, obviously I've not finished my conclusions in terms of finishing the book and putting out the lessons I've learned from people. But just in general, I'll give you some what I think I will say, which is that for most people, Twitter is the place to start. And the reason why I say that Twitter is the place to start with social media is that Twitter is completely open. Like, you sent me a message on Twitter. I hadn't really interacted with you that much before on Twitter, but you could send me a message and I could see the message. Now, on the other networks, it's not so easy to do that. It's easier in some ways than it was on Facebook, but it's still certainly if somebody hasn't set up a page and there's somebody you want to talk to, you can't just sort of send a tweet at somebody like you can on Twitter. And similarly, you can see the conversations that people are having on Twitter, which you can't necessarily on Facebook. So I think Twitter is the place to start for people who want to do marketing or making connections with people of any kind. And then you can maybe, if you've seen people on Twitter, you could go and look to see what Facebook groups they're on and friend them on Facebook. And then Facebook's kind of like where those deeper connections come from. And obviously, if you're listening to people's content, you're listening to their podcasts, you're reading their blogs, you get to know them and they get to know you. And I think this is something I've been thinking lately, is that too many of us are producing too much content while not consuming anybody else's content. It comes back to the stack of books, but almost on like the stack of blog posts that you got to read or stack of podcasts you got to listen to.
Oh my God!
So
yeah, you're right. You're right, and I actually had an interesting conversation with a friend of mine yesterday, and she kept saying my Twitter notifications keep going off because of you and all this stuff. And I said, well, number one, turn your Twitter notifications off because you don't like Twitter notifications. And she goes, great, why didn't I think of that? And I said, I don't know. And so I agree with you about people are producing so much content and throwing it out there that people don't have time to listen to it.
No. Well, the thing is, everybody, it used to work. It used to work as the approach of you just produce content and the people will come. It's the kind of field of dreams idea. But the trouble is, everybody's producing content now. And that is good content is still valuable, but I've kind of, it's probably only the last couple of weeks I've been thinking this. If somebody comes up to me and says they want to run, say, an online business, or they want to be like look at even selling their books, I used to be like, oh yeah, start a blog or start a podcast. Now I would be like, no, don't do that. Don't do that to begin with. Spend a month or two finding like Facebook communities, go on Twitter, follow people, and just consume content around the sort of areas you're interested in. I mean, in some ways, even before you produce your book or your product, you just want to immerse yourself in social media in the sort of area that you're interested in. And then you'll have a much better idea of what sort of content you should be producing and what sort of products you should be producing. And then you start creating the content slowly. Looking to see and doing the thing that I never do, which is look at the analytics for like how many people go to that web page and how many people listen to the shows. Because we're all just so busy producing content that we kind of forget, A, to listen to the community we're in, and B, to basically go through and consume other people's content. And but I am still I mean, I'm sure you are. There's something about certainly podcasting and interviewing people, which is fantastically fun anyway. And you do make connections through the interview process. But I think for a lot of people who are looking to do a lifestyle business, or they're looking for some way to get a passive income, then I think they almost don't start a blog straight away, don't start a podcast straight away. Find out, in some cases, find out what interests you. for a lot of us, I mean, I started off with writing time travel books. Then I switched over to writing fantasy books. And now I'm much more interested in social media in itself because I've seen how it can work for connections. But the majority of connections I made with social media haven't been from the podcast or from the content of the podcast anyway. They've been from connections I made of the podcast. So that's kind of the epiphany that I've had in the last few weeks, if that makes any sense.
Yes. And I learned the hard way that people do not like my biographies because they're so sick of me and the cerebral palsy story. And so what I've decided to do is declare myself as a YA young adult novelist and declare myself as an adult novelist too and urban fantasy and see how that one works because I'm still in the long run of this just like you are, but I tried the autobiography trick. It worked for a little while, but now people are saying, again, when you're speaking about cerebral palsy, you speak so much about cerebral palsy that it's kind of going on deaf ears.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's similar to me being a widower, so to speak. When you're a male person who's widowed young, there aren't that many people like that. And it's very easy. I mean, I'm quite happy to talk about that, but it's very easy for people to just define you by that. And it's the same with disabilities. It's the same with anything. People just define people by what they're from their background or what they talk about. So it's interesting. But yes, you're a YA author. Yeah.
I write stronger fiction than I do any other type of book. And so if you don't mind me asking, before all this podcasting and writing book stuff, what was your day job? And if you don't mind me asking, how did you lose your wife?
Well, I wasn't a trader. I worked for a company that did what's called money broking, which is basically matching up the trades between banks. And I worked on like their IT system. So at one point, this was a system I think like about 20% of the world's financial trades went through. So I do know a little bit about financial services as well. My wife, basically, I met my wife in 2005, and we were married in 2007. And then we both worked in around the same area in the sort of city of London. And I was meeting her after work on a Friday, and she was, I would normally meet her inside this shop, and she wasn't there, and I was kind of like, I walked outside and I saw her, she was sort of leaned up against the side of the wall, and she basically said she was having a stroke, and you can tell when somebody is having a hemorrhage. I mean, the word stroke covers two different kinds of medical conditions, but she was having a massive brain hemorrhage. So I managed to get somebody who was like a medical person who happened to be nearby. And then we got rushed into hospital, but she was in hospital for about 11 months. And she was severely disabled on her left side. So she was, when she came out of hospital, she was wheelchair bound and she had trouble swallowing and speaking and lots of other things. So she did improve, but sadly she passed away about a year later because of a kidney infection. So that's kind of the background of my life. And but in many ways it's changed me as a person because I was drifting along. We all have a habit of just drifting along in life, thinking that everything's going to be the same. And we've got limited time on this earth, and you kind of, it's so easy. There's something about the human spirit that just makes you drift and not want to not want to change your life, try and improve things. But I think you just got to get on with it. So that's kind of the lesson I learned from it. Obviously, it's not something I would wish on other people, but I have managed to. I seem to have changed from somebody who could find the negative and positive things to somebody who can find the positive and negative things, which, from a personal point of view, I'm happy about. Again, I will say I wouldn't wish it on anybody to have that kind of experience.
That's a good way to put it, and I'm sorry for the loss of your wife. You know, people tell me all the time, "Oh, the pain will go away." Yeah, but you're still missing the loved one. You're still missing the loved one. But I'm happy you're found something you love to do, and your podcast is wonderful, by the way. Being self-published again, you guys wanna interested in being self-published. And now, Tim, I'm going to ask you to pick your favorite child question. What's your favorite podcast that everyone should go listen to off of my team that you would think they need to listen to as podcast number one on your podcast feed?
Well, I was thinking about this, and there's a show called Under the Influence by CBC Radio, which is a Canadian show, and it's all about it's all by this Canadian guy who's a former advertising executive, and they literally spend half the year producing the episodes, and then they release them in about a week. So it's only ever on from about January to sort of May time. But it's just really, it's basically the highest quality podcast I've seen, and it's always really interesting stuff. Like they've done one about advertising jingles recently. So that would be my favourite. That would be the first podcast I would listen to. The great thing about podcasting is though that obviously so much depends on your interest. If you've got an interest in any topic, then there's often a podcast about it. So I would say, yeah.
No, you're not kidding. You're not kidding when you say that.
Yeah. I know. I mean, on self-publishing, there's hundreds of self-publishing podcasts. I keep coming across different ones all the time. So there's a competitive niche, I mean.
Oh, yes, exactly. And what do you think people should go listen to of your podcast being self-published? What is your favorite episode of your podcast that you want to promote here on Ask Gwen?
Well, it's called Begin Self-Publishing, the podcast, and you can find that on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and it's even on YouTube, actually, though it's just a little image of in terms of my favourite episode, in some ways, I did an interview with two marketers from Newcastle, Andrew and Pete, and that was my favourite one to do. It's a terrible interview to listen to. We had just tremendous fun doing it as a Christmas special. In terms of the most useful, I've done lots of use. I mean, I've done one recently on Facebook advertising that's very useful to people, and also one on GDPR, which is these new data protection regulations that are coming into the EU soon. And while that's very dull as a topic, so many people have been interested in that because basically, if you're recording people's email addresses as a business or as a person, then you've got a lot of stuff that you need to do before the middle of May. If you've got anybody who's based in the European Union, so that's true for lots of British people. But that show has a lot of interest as well.
So you would say go listen to the one about recording email addresses because people have a lot of work to do on their mailing list if they have anyone in the UK. So, or anyone in the US, I know it's affecting the US because I heard that on another podcast, Create If Writing, and that's one by Kristen Elephant. And she did a whole episode on MailChimp and what you need to do. So you guys are on the same track. So I think that those of my listeners who have a mailing list, go listen to those creative writing on MailChimp, and go listen to Tim Lewis's podcast on what's going to happen, so you guys don't get in trouble.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's going to happen to people in the US. The chances of somebody in the US being prosecuted for it at the moment, it's not much, but it's like there's a whole load of, for example, there's a whole load of tax regulations which people in the US flout on a regular basis. For example, if you sell an ebook from your website to anybody who's based in the European Union or Norway or Korea, and there's a whole load of other countries, you should be paying tax in that country on those ebook sales. But there's so many people who are recommending just sell an ebook on your website. It's like big US podcasters, and it's like, well, yeah, that's going to work for a while, but sooner or later there's going to be some sort of mutual agreement with the US, and then all of these people who've been selling sort of $99 ebooks off their websites are going to have a massive tax bill suddenly appear for them. So it's always... I mean, the trouble with online business is that potentially rules from anywhere in the world could apply depending on where your customers are. And it's a bit of a murky area at the moment, and I wouldn't say that I comply with every single regulation globally, but it's so vulnerable to like somebody in China suddenly decides that they're going to start regulating and sort of banning people's websites in their country or whatever because of this kind of thing. So it's just something to be aware of.
Well, thank you for telling me. I have to now look into that myself, because people recommend to me all the time, sell a book on your website, sell a book on your website, and if I do that, I don't know where the sales are coming from. I mean, none of us do. So I am now going to have to look into the rules and see what I can do as a also to combat these rules, because I'm in the U.S., but still we have a global book market. And so even if I'm in the U.S., Tim is in the U.K., we have a global book market on Amazon, and someone was asking me the other day, do you make money off of your book? And I said, yes, of course I do. I have to declare on my taxes. Once any of us self-publishes a book, we have the chance of making money. So I hope that we do. I do. And so I'm a professional writer on the side. I declared myself a professional writer on the side of my teaching job. And so now I have to go look and see what I can do, and you guys should do the same. Those of you who have mailing lists, those of you who are selling products off your website, because we don't want to get in trouble.
No, I mean, it's probably safe, because the mistake they made in the European Union when they introduced these value-added tax changes was they put no minimum level at all on sales. So most countries, you'd expect, like, if you're under $2,000 or $5,000 or $50,000 or some level, but they introduced it with, like, no minimum threshold at all. So they are changing that next year. So I think there will be, like, 5,000. If you sell less than $5,000, it won't matter. But strictly speaking, in the meantime, everybody's been selling ebooks on their website to anybody based in Europe. It's probably not been within the rules. So it's just something to be aware of.
Yeah. It is.
Hopefully,
and it is. Luckily, people like Tim are on top of the rules, so I follow in Tim's footsteps. Now I just have to go look at the rules to myself, and then I'll tell you guys what I'm going to do if I decide to do it. I'll be transparent with you guys and tell you guys if I decide to do it what I'm going to do. So I'll be a goody two-shoes. I'll be a goody two-shoes and follow the rules to a T, because I knew the other day when someone said, and they actually recorded me saying this, they actually said to me, well, you need to get a landing page. And I'm thinking, before I do that, before I get a landing page and sell my books off my website, I am going to look into it more. And something told me that because of the changes with MailChimp, that there was going to be more changes. So before I send myself down that rabbit hole, I'm going to look into it more, you guys, and I'll be transparent with you guys as to what I am going to do. Now, Tim, where can people find you, and where can people get a hold of you if they choose to do so?
Well, I'm on Twitter as Stone and Press, which is the name of my company. I've also got an account on their Begin SP podcast. I'm on Instagram as the same two account names. You can email me at timlewis@stoneandpress.com if you're an email person. I am on Facebook. I've got a personal profile there. There's a Stone and Press Limited Facebook page, and there's a Begin Self-Publishing Facebook page. You can like those pages if you like. I am kind of open to Facebook friend requests, but if you do that, make sure that you comment on some posts and things so that I know that you're actually a real person and not somebody trying to scam me in some way. Because I normally look and see how many mutual friends I've got, and unless I've got a previous contact with somebody, I generally don't accept friend requests unless I.
That's a great idea for anyone. That's a great idea for anyone. Before you friend anyone on Facebook, including me, or follow me on Twitter, like, post, comment, and then we'll be happy as a long friends there. And especially on LinkedIn, I keep getting all these spam messages on LinkedIn, you guys. So please introduce yourself. Please, if you want to follow my work, that's fine. If you want to follow Tim's work, that's fine. All we ask is that you introduce yourself, make yourself friendly. Just open up the door on social media gently. Don't barge through the door, and don't say hi without a little introduction.
Yeah, I mean, LinkedIn is better in that you can actually put a personalised introduction. But you're right. Probably the same comes back.
The same comes for everything else. And I think we just lost Tim. Hopefully he goes back in.
Am I back again?
But you guys, you're back again, because I was going to say the same thing goes for everything else. You guys, if you follow my work or follow Tim's work, you guys have to make a warm introduction to us. You can't be barging through the door like elephants.
Yeah. I mean, I say Twitter is the best place to start. I actually knocked a cable with my foot so that you went out onto my speaker, and then I was like,
Oh, jeez.
Because I've got my...
technology knocks the mic off the table. Yes. So...
Yeah.
Knock the mic off the table like podcasting. Here we go. So, Tim, I know it's late over there, but I want you to ask me a couple questions, because it's been an honor speaking to you, and I just want you to ask me a couple questions about anything, about my books, about Cerebral Palsy, about anything. The floor is yours.
Well, I sent 2 questions which are nothing to do with your books or cerebral palsy or anything. And it's funny because I there's a Facebook live show that some of my friends in Wichita run, and it's kind of very sort of jocular and funny at times. And there were a couple of questions that I was asking the comments of the guests, and it's kind of like one of which is, who would win in a fight between a bear and a shark?
A bear and a shark. I would say the bear, because we get bears out in Colorado. So I, 9 times out of 10, see a bear walking through my backyard like there's no tomorrow. Granted, I live 5 minutes away from the center of Aspen, but I still live in what I consider a nature preserve. So if I was to choose who would win a fight between a bear and a shark, I would say the bear.
Okay. I mean, the funny thing about that question is everybody's very passionate. Like, they're either team shark or the team bear. And it's and it's one of those sort of, I don't know, it's not a question I created. I stole it off somebody else, but I can't remember where I got it from. But I've been asking people that question and shark are ahead in terms of people, but not much. I think bear's making a comeback. The other question that I ask, and it's a much more general one, it's just, do you prefer Star Trek or Star Wars, or don't you have a preference?
Believe it or not, I am not the Star Trek or Star Wars type. So believe it or not, I don't have a preference. But I know that people like what they like. I know that podcasters have admitted on their podcast that they're big Star Wars fans. Believe it or not, I don't have a preference. And no, I did not see the last movie. I'll probably get fan mail about that one saying, why didn't you see the last movie? Because the last movie of Star Wars, because I am not a big Star Wars fan or Star Trek fan. I like what I like, but Star Wars or Star Trek doesn't seem to suit my fancy.
Okay, so again, Star Wars is more popular on that one. So I was surprising actually. I would see why. I would definitely see why. And podcasters have said on their podcast, man, I have a big affinity for Star Wars. One podcast in particular, and one podcast host in particular, David Mac Power Users. And so David's actually been on this podcast talking about Mac Power Users. And so to those of you who are Mac Power Users, go listen to Mac Power Users. Mac Power Users can be found on Spotify and all those good places. And David truly is a Star Wars fan. I mean, he is R2-D2 sitting on his desk. He will talk about it for hours, and then co-host Katie goes, oh boy, here we go again. No, she's literally said that on the podcast. Oh boy, here we go again. And you can tell she doesn't have the love for it like he does. So I have heard that podcasters admit their love for Star Trek and Star Wars. Anyway, I suppose that's my questions that I ask people.
That's good questions that you ask people.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting the answers you get at times, and often the explanations people give are more interesting than like whether it's one or t'other. That's right.
Now,
it's often not
to say that if an Indiana Jones movie came out, I would go see that, because granted, that was my first movie ever in movie theaters that I saw as a young child. So granted, if a new Indiana Jones movie came out, I would go and see that. But Star Wars and Star Trek, not so much.
Oh, okay. They're talking. There was speculation on the web the other day that they, not the next film, but the film after, they might have a female Indiana Jones. What would you think about that?
I would actually like that because I think Indiana Jones needs a little female power. I mean, for those of you who saw Wonder Woman, which I did go and see, trust me, I'm not living under that big of a box. I did go and see Wonder Woman. That was fabulous, talking about girl power and talking about women in power, but I think women need to be more in the lead and less of the manpower, and I think they need to put women in the leads in Star Wars too. And I think they need to put women not as side roles in Star Wars, but women leads, because we have all these Jedis in Star Wars that are men, and we have all these women supporting these men as supporting actors, and it drives me nuts. It literally drives me nuts. Another thing that drives me nuts is when people are trying to play the disabled, and they're not disabled, but they're trying to play the disabled. You guys need, and I know I'll get a lot of support on this one, you guys need to actually get disabled actors in these big time movies if you guys want disabled characters in these big time movies, because able-bodied person playing the disabled doesn't work. And I'm talking about any disability, not just cerebral palsy. I'm talking about Down syndrome. I'm talking about autism. I'm talking about cerebral palsy. It just doesn't work, and it doesn't sit well with me. And you guys know why. So I think we need more women in lead roles. I think we need more of the disabled in the lead roles. If they want to play a disabled person, get a disabled person to play that person.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the old days of films where they used to black people up and put boot pillows on their face. I mean, you wouldn't do that now, but it seems like it's acceptable to do it with disabled people in film.
Yeah, it seems it seems like every time I see a disabled role being played, it's played by a able-bodied person, and so that's one of the things that drives me nuts. I don't know about you guys, but I am not a big fan of Star Trek or Star Wars, but I am a bigger fan of Indiana Jones than I am Star Trek and Star Wars. But if Indiana Jones came as a female player, I would definitely be a supporter of Indiana Jones, the female version.
Okay, well, that's interesting to know.
So,
because I've seen some women say that they couldn't see Indiana Jones as a woman, which I thought, like, well, obviously I don't think it would be Indiana Jones. It'd be, well, I don't know. I suppose Indiana's a very cool name.
It would be a female name, but I think Indiana Jones as a female would be dead cool. I definitely do.
Yeah.
And I want to thank you. I know it's way over there. It's way over here. I want to thank you, Tim, for coming on and sharing your story. And you guys can all find Tim's books on Amazon. So here's my plea. Please leave a review on all Amazon books. That makes the Amazon Cookie Monster very happy, because what Amazon does is when a review shows it to about 10,000 more people than Tim had before, 2 reviews just rank it up higher. So what I would recommend you do is leave an honest review on Tim's books, leave an honest review on my books, and we'll have all of Tim's information in the show notes. And you guys, one other thing, you guys can contact Tim about publishing your sci-fi and fantasy books. We didn't even get to that, Tim. That you help people self-publish sci-fi and fantasy, correct?
Well, really anything. Though most of that is via the podcast at the moment. Though I'm going to be moving more towards doing sort of coaching programs and things for people who want to self-publish their books in the next couple of months. So that's another thing I'm doing.
Okay.
I need to finish my book first, though. Really.
You need to finish that social media book.
Yeah.
That's your next project. To finish the social media book. And as soon as the social media book comes out, you guys, I will probably be marching over to Amazon and buying it, or buying an ebook copy of it, or telling you guys
it should be an audio book.
Audiobook. That's my speed. Thank you. You're speaking my language. I wish more of my...
I listen mostly to audiobooks as well now. So.
I wish more of my author friends would stick their books in audio. Thank you very much. Tim, I'll be marching over to iTunes and buying a copy of Tim's social media book on audio, because audio is my favorite thing in the whole wide world, and you guys know that. So please, when I say ready, set, go on Tim's social media book, please go show your support, and let's make it a #1 bestseller. I know that would make Tim very happy, and please go buy it in audiobook. I know that's what I'll be doing, and I'm sure that Tim will keep me updated on when the book comes out. And I just want to thank you guys for tuning in to another fabulous episode, and I thank Tim for accepting my invitation. And please go share this podcast out so we can make the podcast community even bigger and stronger and get more books out there. The moment I say that, people will say, when you gave me a project, yes, I gave you projects. I gave you projects to write the book and quit talking about them. So that's my homework assignment to you guys. Go write a book and quit saying I want to be an author, and go listen to Tim's podcast. Keep listening to mine, and we'll just make both communities stronger. Thanks to you guys. Bye.
Bye.
Please leave a review on Amazon for my books, and please share this episode with a friend who needs it.